Earth, fire, wind, water. No, this is not the opening of Captain Planet. I'm talking about the elemental planes, or as Planescape calls it, the inner planes, to contrast with the great wheel cosmology of the outer planes. If you missed the outer planes episode, I've got you covered. While the outer planes are shaped by belief, the inner planes are the building blocks of the multiverse. You may have heard of the name elemental chaos, but to me that just sounds like miscellaneous sludge. Whereas the Planescape inner planes are both cohesive and symmetrical. Plato was the first to coin the term element, but today we're going to play ball. And arts and crafts, of course. Over the years, there has been many visual depiction of the inner planes, but no one has done it in 3D before, and that is what I'm here to do today. Hey everybody, my name is D, and you are watching D&D Ditches, and today the D stands for diametrical opposition because, well, you'll see. First thing I do with painting is putting down the drop sheets. As I don't have any old newspapers lying around, I carved up an Amazon packaging box. The inner planes are arranged in a spherical formation. I bought this foam ball from a craft store to emulate the inner plane. We have a seam in the center of the ball where the two halves of the foam is joined. Comparing this ball to planet Earth, the seam is equivalent to the equator which divides the ball into north and south. One pole is flat with a groove so the ball can be used as an ornament, while the other pole is perfectly round. As there are 6 primary planes, we need to draw the X, Y, and Z axes. We can use the existing equator seam as the X axis. Now to draw the Y and Z axes, I'm using masking tape from one pole to the other and back again, forming the meridian as the Y axis. And then a second time at a 90-degree angle to the other 2 axes to form the Z axis. This creates 3 pairs of diametrically opposed intersections where the lines meet, with a total of 6 which are equal distance from another. Now to draw a circle around each of the intersections. As I'm a fan of using random shit around the house, I grab some mini post-it notes to gauge the size. I then draw a circle around the area where the lines meet. After removing the tape, it's painting time. As a mixing tray, I found some tacky old disposable party plates. Why couldn't they be classy and have, I don't know, pink flamingos or something? I'm going to start with the flat south pole, which is the negative energy plane. Having done some painting in high school, I remember black not being a good color for mixing, so I am going with brown. As I started painting, I realized the paint's not going on too well. Maybe it's a cheap paint, maybe it's a cheap brush, but probably both. The negative energy plane, some will call the plane of death, absolute pitch black representation of anti-life and the energy which empowers the undead. Back in 2E, this gave undead nasty powers like permanent ability score and level drains. The Dustman faction maintains a base here called the Fortress of the Soul, but not much else is here except for the undead, so don't come here unless you want to join them. The opposite pole is obviously positive energy, which we will get to later. Along the equator are the 4 primary elemental planes. Let's do fire first, which is obviously red, so I'm using Merlot. Oh, and one tip. On the planes, people don't say the elemental plane of fire. They would just say fire with a capital F, or air, or water, and so on. It's really no surprise that everything on the plane of fire is cloaked in merciless flames. The majority of the plane is a flaming ocean with occasional solid landmass pockets from the adjacent plane of Earth. The city of Brass, ruled by the tyrannical Efreet, is the largest city of all inner planes, sporting the largest bazaar this side of the multiverse. And its hottest commodity, slaves of all shapes and sizes for the right price, as the Efreet are notorious slavers. Better have magical fire protection if you want to visit, however, else you'll be cremated within seconds. The next primary elemental plane is a plane of air. In this case, I will use Canary Yellow. Air is by far the most populated inner plane due to it being the most hospitable of the inner planes. Magic helps to get around, but isn't the bare necessity for survival like the other planes. Endless blue sky as the eye can see, with occasional pockets of other elemental matter from adjacent planes. Cities are built on suitably large land masses, forming natural floating islands. There is no up or down on the plane of air, as it's a matter of perspective. One simply decides which way is down and will immediately fall in that direction. Just make sure you change direction in time before you collide with any obstacles. As the plane has no up and down, it also has no gravity, hence inanimate objects will hang in midair. Arrows travel in a straight line when fired, but will get gradually slower until it eventually loses momentum and stops in midair. Large cities and palaces built by genie offers a welcome respite for most travelers. While waiting for the paint to dry, I found a plastic container in my house that I can use to suspend the ball, which allows me to continue painting while leaving the painted surfaces to dry. We'll continue on to the next primary element, water. Obviously, the color emerald blue would be appropriate in this case. Think of an endless, non-salty ocean with no surface and no bottom, with occasional coral reefs with aquatic life forms. One can drift in any direction without disorientation, as similar to air, water has no up or down. Bubbles of breathable air exist but are rare, hence most travelers will be expected to supply magical water-breathing apparatus. The Marid builds sprawling underwater metropolises including the City of Glass, which serves as an important nexus for interplanar travel, which has earned it the nickname Sigil of the Elements. Moving on to the final primary plane, we have the plane of Earth. I am using the color forest green to depict the plane of Earth. Imagine being buried alive. That's a close approximation of one's first time in the plane of Earth, giving it a reputation of being one of the least accessible inner planes as one's ability to travel is significantly impeded. Carving a tunnel out of solid rock is an option, albeit a slow one, and the tunnel naturally closes within a few days as the plane heals itself. Survival is also a massive challenge as there is no breathable air or drinkable water outside of rare pockets, but one could just as easily find pockets of explosive or noxious gas. Frequent earthquakes tend to cause cave-ins for any tunneling venture. Anyone who's unfortunate enough to survive the natural hazards would likely to be captured by the Dao. Being ruthless slavers, they build citadels with elaborate mazes, making escape difficult to say the least. The last primary inner plane is positive energy, in the North Pole position opposite negative energy. Originally I thought about leaving this part unpainted as I was going to use the color white to depict this plane, but then I thought, positive, you deserve to look busted and crusted like the other planes, so I whipped out the white paint. Positive energy is the plane of life, and that's a good thing, right? Says absolutely no one on the planes. It's empty void of brilliant white light, instant permanent blindness for anyone not wearing a blindfold. The life energy consistently heals as opposed to negative, constantly draining one's life energy. However, while on positive, when one's total hit points reaches twice their maximum, they explode and combust like an overinflated balloon. One strategy is to constantly stab yourself with a weapon while traveling on this plane. Just hope you can cause enough damage each turn to outdo the healing that you receive from the plane. And there's not much here either, as the plane remains largely unexplored, with the irony being that the plane of life is prohibitively difficult to survive in. And that is the 4 primary elemental planes and the 2 energy planes. Other inner planes are created when 2 primary planes collide. I left the paint to dry overnight and now we begin the second phase. Around the equator between the 4 primary elements are the secondary para-elemental planes. Air and fire combine to form smoke, so red and yellow makes orange. The physical conditions are like the plane of air and is hot, but not hot enough to cause constant damage like the plane of fire. The environmental hazard here is the thick black roiling clouds of choking smoke. A successful saving throw causes poison damage, a failed saving throw is immediate suffocation. The good aligned genie of air and the evil aligned Afridi of fire often use smoke as their battlefield as they wrestle for control of this plane, so do be careful as to not step into an ambush. Moving on, between earth and water is the plane of ooze. In this case, mixing green and blue gives us a darker green. Does an ocean of muck, mud and slime sound appealing? Yeah, thought so. Ooze is like the plane of water except it's more difficult to see, breathe or swim through mud. Powerful wizards and cruel tyrants use ooze as a prison of the inner planes by sealing the victim inside a large pocket of air. The Hive Ward and Sigil have multiple two-way portals to ooze as a way of excreting rubbish and refuse out of Sigil, as the plane has the ability to decompose matter in just a few days. Decent way to escape this putrid plane as well, if you don't mind diving headfirst into trash, or worse. And then we have ice, situated between water and air. I am using more yellow than green to get a lighter shade, trying to differentiate from the other greens on the ball. More frigid than Stygia of Beator, moving through the plane of ice is like plane of earth but frozen. Magical protection is essential for survival as no amount of clothing will safeguard one from the relentless winter. Towards the border with air, you can reach and walk on the edge of the plane with howling blizzards. This area is called precipice and often used as an entryway to the plane, as the area has gravity, hence feels similar to the frozen landscapes of other worlds. The mountain of the ultimate winter is also in this region, being the undisputed coldest place in the multiverse. where a failed saving throw freezes one solid within 1d4 rounds, and even creatures immune to cold takes damage. The next para-elemental plane is Magma, between Fire and Earth. As I am using green to represent Earth, red and green in this case makes Burgundy. The only thing worse than buried alive in rocks is buried in lava. Magma combines the worst aspects of Fire and Earth, the deadly heat combined with restriction of travel. Why would anyone want to come here? Good question. There's a city called Nevermore built around an artifact called Chillsword, which is able to cool the magma to be sufficiently hospitable. There's also a gleaming black structure several stories tall simply referred to as the Monolith. Rumors say not even gods can destroy, although the true purpose of the Monolith remains a mystery. With this done, we have now completed the para-elemental planes. I will leave this to dry overnight. I had enough time to do a second coat to get the colors to pop. The tertiary quasi-elemental planes is created when a primary element comes into contact with an energy plane. Hence there are 4 positive and 4 negative quasi-elemental planes. The energy affects the base element and tends to produce the best and worst manifestations of that element. Let's look at the positives first. When air meets positive, we have lightning, also referred to as a plane of storms, being represented by pale yellow. Physical conditions are similar to the plane of air and safe to breathe, but skies are filled with flashing black storm clouds. Thunder and lightning juts out at all angles unpredictably. Carrying metal objects is an invitation to be struck by lightning each round, but even without metal, one still has a chance to be struck. And if so, saving throw will be required to not be deafened by thunder. An ancient and mysterious tower of storms made out of an unknown element stands near the border with positive. Next up, when fire meets positive, it is the quasi-elemental plane of radiance. In this case, the color mixes into a soft pink, barren and featureless except for the splendor of bright glowing colors, like having your eyeballs blasted with prismatic spray. Likely the last thing one gets to see before going blind. Physical condition is similar to air except the plane is as hot as fire, plus a dangerous amount of light. I want to see goggles, people. Rumors say that steel forged on radiance take on special properties unique to this plane, such as a blade that burns like the light of the sun. The Heart of Light is located here, also known as the Tower of Healing, made of solid blue light. It is said that all wounds and afflictions can be cured from within the tower. When Earth meets positive, the plane of mineral is created, and we're using mint green this time. Dwarven Mountains and Biotopia be damned, this is the real treasure trove of the multiverse. Rich mineral veins supporting planet-sized crystals and mineral ores are just the souvenirs. Getting around is a bit of a problem though, as not only is it as difficult to move through as a plane of Earth, jagged sharp crystals also inflict slashing and piercing damage as you move. Prolonged exposure to the plane even causes petrification, or more appropriately, crystallization. Still, many brave souls journey to the Tower of Lead, said to be the greatest forge in all of the multiverse. Finally, we have the plane of steam when water meets positive, and the color is azure. The air here is thick and clammy, like a sauna except cool. An ocean of mist might be a more apt description. Physical conditions are closer to air with poor visibility, but anyone not able to breathe underwater will be under the effect of slow. Alchemists from across the multiverse travel to the Tower of Ice to brew potions. There is also a city called Adrift. The center of the city contains statues at least 1,000 feet tall. They resemble humans, or at least the few statues that remain relatively intact, as most exist as floating fragments. Their purpose is shrouded in mystery. I give the paint a few hours to set before starting on the negative quasi-elemental planes. When touched by negative, the result tends to be the absence of the element. When it meets the plane of air, the result is vacuum, the absence of air. This watery brown paint is terrible due to the weak pigments. When mixed with a yellow paint, the result could only be described as chicken shit. I suppose is an accurate representation of this terrible place. The quasi-elemental plane of vacuum, some would call it the plane of nothing. It has nothing. No air, no light, no sound, no warmth. Travel in this plane is done via sheer force of will, but the traveler will need to bring their own air, water, warmth, and most of all, hope. The Doomguard faction reveres this plane as they believe this is the end goal the rest of the multiverse is heading towards, and thus they built Citadel Exilis, also known as the Portal of the Last Breath. When fire meets negative, the result is ash, also the absence of fire. Starting from the border with the plane of fire, the flames flicker and dies, and from there on an infinite expanse of choking ash. There is no breathable air, and the cinders suck all the warmth from living beings, inflicting cold damage each turn. Vecna owns a massive ancient fortress in the shape of a skull called Citadel Cavitius. Some say it used to be a Doomguard fortress until Vecna took it over. Others even say it had ties to a Cyberwreck. The Doomguard have since erected another base called the Crumbling Citadel in order to maintain operation on Ash. When Earth meets negative, the result is dust. Once again, the Doomguard used the 4 negative quasi-elemental planes as evidence to support their belief in entropy, that these 4 planes represent the death and decay of the 4 elements, and an ocean of dust is the clearest representation yet. Each day spent on the plane causes part of one's body to break up, hang around long enough to face complete disintegration. The Doomguard maintain another base here called Citadel Alluvius. The final plane is when water meets negative. The result is quasi-elemental plane of salt. Near the border with the plane of water, the plane is comparable to seawater. But moving further into the plane, salt crystals begin to form, which saps the moisture from anything it touches. Travelers will take dehydration damage for each day spent on this plane. The Doomguard have their final base here called Citadel Sielt, where they welcome visitors from the lower planes, selling weapons and information to the Bayata Zoo and Tanari alike in order to prolong the Blood War. And that is the last of the 18 inner planes. Apart from positive and negative, every plane shares its border with 6 other planes. I will now let it dry overnight before the final reveal.
We go like wildfire.
And now for the final product, the inner planes in 3D. I had done a second or third coat on some of these to make them look a little bit better. Representing the North Pole, we have the positive energy plane, and representing the South Pole, we have the negative energy plane. And around the equator, we have the 4 primary elemental planes of fire, air, water, and earth. And then in between them, we have the secondary para-elemental planes of smoke, ice, ooze, and magma. And then on the northern hemisphere, between positive and the primary elements are the 4 positive quasi-elemental planes of radiance, lightning, steam, and mineral. And then in the southern hemisphere, between negative and the primary elements are the 4 negative quasi-elemental planes of ash, vacuum, salt, and dust. These 18 planes make up the inner planes, and the ethereal plane touches every single one of these inner planes and serves as the pathway between the prime material plane and the inner plane, and vice versa. And now for the last part of the video, I would like to introduce the concept of bordered infinity. As you may know, planes are infinite in size and scope. As one moves towards the border of an elemental plane, the physical conditions will transition to become more and more like the neighboring plane until one crosses over the border and into the adjacent plane. These border territories are even given names. For example, the border of air and smoke is called the Eternal Haze, and there are rumors of a hidden city lying amongst the choking fumes. So how is it possible for a plane to have definitive borders and still be infinite in size? Well, isn't Planescape wonderful? If you would like more information about the Planescape inner planes, I recommend checking out the 2E supplement called The Inner Planes. It details all 18 of the planes covered today, including the bordered territories. And that's all the time we have for our episode today. If you learned something new today, Hulk smash that like button and make sure you subscribe for more Planescape goodness. Until next time, hope we get to hang out again in my next video.